Believe it or not, this is a bridge. It cost over £58,000 and there are 5 more of them on a stretch of the A11 in Suffolk. And I know what you're thinking, it's just a few wooden posts with some wire, and yes, that's exactly what it is. And now you're thinking, did we really spend £350,000 on 6 of these? Yeah, we sure did. So what do? Nothing, and they're a massive waste of time and money. The question we perhaps should be asking is, what were they supposed to do? These unique structures are bat bridges. No, I'm not making it up. Bridges for bats. Yep, that's right. Bats. I mean, bats are those things that fly, right? What the f*** do they need a bridge for? A question that I intend to answer, allowing us to determine whether these bridges are a sensible solution to a self-inflicted environmental issue or a waste of £350,000. It all started back in 2012 when work began on upgrading the A11 between the Five Ways roundabout and Thetford, bypassing Elvedon along the way. The plan was to turn the fairly crap single dual carriageway road into a chonky dual carriageway with proper junctions and everything, but to build it would require the destruction of large areas of trees and woodland, and it turns out animals live in these areas, and in this case large colonies of bats were discovered to be nesting right about where they wanted to put the new A11. So what do? Well, you ignore all of that, of course, crack on and worry about it later, which led to the construction of the 6 bat bridges found on that section of the A11. And in your mind, I'm sure you're imagining a bat flying around and spotting the bridge from afar, landing, walking across it, and then flying off again, having safely traversed the dangerous dual carriageway. But to my surprise, and maybe yours, that's not how it works. I'll explain the theory behind them, and then I'll tell you about how they work in reality. To keep it simple, let's say before the road was upgraded to a massive dual carriageway, bats lived in these woods here. At night they come out to hunt, and they do that over here. To get there, they fly above the tree line over the road and back again, and they'll do this every day using the same route, almost like a commute. But not so much anymore, because we built a dual carriageway, creating a massive open space between these 2 areas, which the bats fly into on their nightly commute, dropping below the treetops, and as they cross over the now massive dual carriageway, get destroyed by Dave in his fully laden truck. If you were a bat, this is suboptimal. What with being blind and all, you've got no chance. But the fact a bat is mostly blind is the very reason these bridges work, supposedly. Bats use sonar to navigate their way around. I'm sure you're familiar with such a system, but in essence, bats emit super high frequency sound pulses which reflect off the surroundings, and by listening to the returning echo, they can determine the size, shape and texture of an object or the surrounding area. Fascinating. Unfortunately, whilst it is a good system, it's not so great with cars and vehicles that are hurtling towards you at a high speed. So we built bridges for them. Definitely not so they can land and walk across, that's fair, that was never the intention. But if we look at the bridges from a bat's perspective, at least as far as we know, they would see these bridges as a linear structure of sorts, perhaps something like a hedgerow or a line of trees. And with its height being similar to that of the surrounding woodland, the bats will fly over the bridges thinking they're trees or whatever, and thus they don't get hit by vehicles. This sounds pretty good to me, and that's what the council thought. So £350,000 later, we've got 6 of these bad boy bat bridges, and everyone's sleeping at night knowing they saved the bats. So do they work? Of course they don't. It's bats. They're not going to spot a bridge on their little sonar radar or whatever and be like, oh, I must fly only over that part because of the dangerous traffic. And now we move on to the reality of how these bridges are working, and the short version is that they aren't. And don't just take my word for it. Professor John Altrincham from the University of Leeds, so, you know, educational and stuff, he says they don't fulfil the ecological requirements of the bat, and there is no good reason why the bat would pay any attention to it. If only they'd asked you about it first, Professor. You could have explained that £350,000 is much better off being spent on, well, at this point, anything coke and hookers if you want. And what did Norfolk Wildlife Trust think? We're unable to comment on how one might spend £350,000 in such a way, but the bat bridges are bullshit. Okay, they didn't say that. However, they are of the opinion that the bat bridges are not fit for purpose. But why do they care, given that what we're looking at is in Suffolk? Well, having spent £350,000 on 6 bat structures that failed, Norfolk Council saw that and thought, yeah, good idea, and they spent £1 million on 7 bat bridges which feature on the recently constructed A1270, and no, they don't work there either. In fact, the Norfolk Wildlife Trust suggests that the road's construction drove the bats away completely, meaning the bridges are pointless. In Suffolk, though, there are still bats living alongside the A11, but unfortunately, all studies and tests have shown that these bat bridges make no difference at all to a bat's well-being, meaning not only have we wasted a load of money, the bats see no benefit either. But what's the solution? Well, probably don't build a road through colonies of bats, but as long as councils appear to be making an effort to save the environment and tick a few of the relevant boxes, they'll just crack on either way. Oh, and studies have shown that if you install an underpass on a bat's commuting route rather than some wire and poles, in 96% of cases the bats would use it. Jobs. You're welcome. Thanks for watching.